Whether it's the last train at Clarksville or the first pitch at Ramundi, developments happening all around independent ball. Get the details this week on the NY Boulders podcast. Episode 267 begins now. We actually have a lot to discuss here. We burned way too much time in the pre-show, so the culture of this show may change ever so slightly. Isn't that?
There's no culture.
Every place has culture, just not all of it is well defined, right? More importantly, we have Oakland discussion, we have American Association discussion, we have a Kevin Tuve interview, we have a slew of miscellaneous stuff, including Mexico talk. So we really probably should actually start getting this going so we could try to get everything done in like a somewhat orderly fashion.
Hola. So I was caught up on the Mexico talk.
Well, I mean, we started in California, so that's kind of Mexico in a sense.
Okay. Talking Northern California and Mexico. All right. Sure,
California is a kind of Spanish name.
Let's take that as the lead-in.
Like, California is a kind of Spanish name. We're just going to work with it. Just let it keep going. You know, just embrace the descent.
Oh, man. All
Which
right.
really has been embrace the descent has really been the theme of our Oakland conversations, but perhaps it's not the case this time. Perhaps it's a positive development because on Tuesday, the Oakland City Council agreed to allow the city administrator to negotiate a 1-year lease for Ramundi. This seems like really everything's already done. It's just a matter of crossing some T's, dotting some I's, getting the basics worked out, which should be done with final council approval at the end of the month, April 30th to be exact. Essentially, this deal is that the team's going to get the park, Ramundi that is, and a lot on Wood Street for parking. The team's going to spend $1.6 million in renovation work for Ramundi and oversee the removal of contaminated soil from the Wood Street lot. Likewise, an important detail to remember is that this Ramundi Park is a city park and will remain open to the general public on non-game days. The team plans to resod the field, repair the irrigation systems, upgrade the scoreboard, and improve baseball infrastructure. That seems kind of like a catch-all term for fix the other stuff that needs to be fixed. Already some work has been done. They got access to entry back in March, so they've started doing some work. Now they're just able to do the rest of the work. All improvements should be done by opening day, which is June 4th. And the lease agreement is $500 a month for the parking lot, $570 for Ramundi itself. So that means they're going to be paying just under $1,100 a month for the two combined properties. Soil removal should begin April 16th, which was earlier this week when the council agreed to it, and conclude sometime in late August, early September there. So honestly, the biggest takeaway from this is in the San Francisco, Oakland Bay area, I feel like $1,100 a month is a great deal for any kind of property, housing or recreational.
Yeah, agreed. Are we on Ramundi or Raimondi? I was going Raimondi, but now
it probably is Raimondi, but I just yeah.
Because honestly, every time I said Ramundi, I got big Raimundo vibes from Rocket Power, which is, a vibe.
Probably subconsciously why I'm calling it that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, woody, you know how it goes.
I was from the golden age.
Oh man, having a paywall on an article about contaminated soil doesn't feel right. Especially when you're talking about how it's in a area of people who don't have a lot of money, but I guess you're keeping them from reading that article. I am a paywall person. I'm a pro paywall person. I believe that people should be paid for their work, but every once in a while, it's something that's a public health thing. I feel like maybe we shouldn't be paying for it.
I want their work for free.
Yeah, I mean, so does everybody, and that's how our newspaper's doing. Anyway, there's a lot to take in there, and I feel like that's how we start every Oakland conversation. I don't know. We've already talked about how I don't want to be negative, which is always interesting about when it's a conversation with a little bit of soil contamination issue. I don't know. What do you think? I will offshoot this back to you before I start jumping in here.
Positive take. It seems like that at the very least, the city of Oakland's going to get a nice upgrade to a ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like they are at least following through on the beginnings of what they promised, which is always a positive sign. It seems like there was some good local support from what we have linked in the show notes there. And it seems like they're still paying rent. Admittedly, it's extremely low, but I mean, they're putting $1.6 million in on a 1-year lease. So like, I feel like that kind of makes up the difference there, right? There's some questions more long-term I have for it, and some, feasibility. I do wonder in less than 2 months how much of that renovation work you're going to actually be able to do. But at least on the surface, it seems good. It seems like there's a good working relationship. It definitely helps build into the "we're for Oakland" narrative. So I definitely think that's a positive. I do, on some level, I guess, question the feasibility and sustainability is really the question on it. Like, they have big plans here, and it feels like this is the kind of thing that need to be met earlier. Obviously they had to audible off of Laney College because timelines were an issue. But I still do have concerns. I look at removing the state it's in, and I look at the mocks for what it's supposed to be. And that's really where my concern is, where it's like, it doesn't feel like a Pioneer League ballpark. It feels like a Pacific Association ballpark to me, which is a big difference there. However, trying to stay positive, it is a very good sign of things to come. It appears that the city, both government and population, and the team seem to be on the same page and working well so far.
Yes. Okay. Where to begin?
At the beginning.
Being positive. Okay. So they have till June 7th, right? June 7th? Yeah. Or is that June 4?
June 4. June 4.
Thank you. Okay. There's so much work to do before then. Like, I mean, again, I don't know if we have the most recent photos of the situation, but like, aren't stands going up, right? I mean, yeah. I know they're doing sidewalk and street work here. I'm zooming in on pictures. I don't see stands, but it's the opposite corner. It's like 6 weeks, dude. It's so much work. I just don't know. I mean, there is a ball field carved out. Okay, I'll say this. You spend enough money, you can get anything done. Pretty convinced of that. The first thing that I think stood out to us is it is ambitious. It is good that, hey, Oakland is definitely winning out of this, which is good. And in an area where they could use the boost, I don't think they'd be rewarded with the amount of money from taxpayers that would create this kind of benefit that they're probably going to see from this. So that's good. I'm always pro, private entity footing the bill on improvements. Then, yeah. I mean, the city is paying, but the city is paying for essentially the stuff that they would have had to pay for already, which is the contaminated soil removal. So cool. I guess what's standing out to me still is, I don't know. Okay, we'll stay on the positives. Yeah. Also, they now have a seat map posted to their ticket sales site, and they only have the first game posted for sale and a 12-game package. And you can see a lot of ticket sales have happened, at least in certain sections for this game. There's a couple sections only like 2 seats available. Seems to be like a 3,000 person ballpark, probably 2,000-ish of like legit reserved seats. Good. That's cool. Am I missing any of the other positives?
I feel like that's generally
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Although admittedly, I'm looking at something else on my screen right now, so perhaps in the shuffle I
World War
lost
Three.
something. No, it's Alex
Okay,
Murillo
cool.
acting like an indie ball owner. One of his quotes from the press
Yeah.
conference was, "quote I didn't think Glendale would kick me out, but they did. They wanted a 20-year deal. I said no. That ignores the part where he stopped paying his lease."
Yeah. I mean,
That's a very indie ball thing. So
there's a very good YouTube account out there. This is a quick sidebar, but I think it's worth noting in the pod. And called what Baseball's Not Dead, I think it is.
Yeah.
Just posted an hour and 53-minute long, extensive history of baseball contracts and contract negotiations, and basically from how we got to like a couple $1,000s to 700 million. And it is fascinating how many times statements are put out there like this by owners of teams that are like, well, we said this and then they said that. I don't know what else I'm supposed to do. And then like some other reporters like, what about those 3 things you didn't mention? And they're like, you're banned. And they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
You better get used to writing about soccer, buddy.
Get ready to learn football, buddy.
Now back to discussions with sketchy owners. If we're going to start getting into the negatives, is I'll headline with I still don't trust Paul Friedman as far as I could throw him, and I could throw him probably further than one might think. So maybe it's not that bad of a thing.
What about Brian Carney?
I don't know who's this?
The other owner.
The other one. Who is he? Where is he? What? I don't. I'll have an opinion of him when he shows up. It feels like all we've gotten from Oakland is these promises. Now there is work going on. They have advertised it as like they've been working on this place before there was even, an agreement in place, and they're sort of positioning it as, because we're betting on Oakland. We're betting on, we'll give back to this community, and we're betting that the community's going to give back to us in the same way. Of course, what you and I, reasonable people, can sit here and go is, yeah, because if you didn't start doing that work, you would not have time. You had to do it because even if it got approved, if you started all that work now, you wouldn't be able to get it completed. So, I'll take that as cool. That is good. But also, I'm not sure how much of it I buy. The others is, I don't know. The parking is weird. Are there scoreboards? I haven't seen anything about video boards. I know there was something in like the town meeting documents, but we can't really find those right now. So maybe I'm way off. Dude, it's just as the number of answers they give increases, the number of questions I have increases. It's so weird. It's a very odd situation. For me, like Hagerstown, or not Hagerstown, I'm so sorry. Well, Hagerstown, but New England, which we've been a little rough on because we think they've really fumbled the bag several times here. But when they're putting out like what this is, we're like, nah, okay. Like, yeah, no further questions. Like, we see how you're going to try to do this. We don't think it's going to go well, but whatever.
Yeah.
Oakland, though, I'm like, every time they're like, I feel like everything ends with, it's going to be great. And it's like, well, all right. But essentially, you just listed a bunch of complications. So I don't know. But
it feels like there's just some, just trust me, bro, vibes going on here.
It is a temporary ballpark, but it is a ballpark being built in 6 weeks before opening day.
Is it a temporary ballpark though?
I don't know, dude.
1.6 is a lot to put into a temporary ballpark.
I mean, yeah, but it's also then, if it's not a temporary ballpark, it's got to be just bleachers. So is bleachers around a field a temporary ballpark or not? I don't know. As to the Jackals, I guess, but like, I don't know.
If you replace all the boards on a ship, is it the same ship?
I'm trying to think. What was it last week? How many games did Hagerstown give away?
I believe a series.
Or they kept the same number. They kept their opening weekend, didn't they? I don't know.
I don't believe they gave up one game. bumped
I'm
it
curious.
back and then limited attendance.
I'm just curious.
I don't
Who will
have
have
it
to
in
give up
front of
more
me at the
games?
moment, so
That's a good runner. Get that on DraftKings. So you're gonna have to give up more home games. Hagerstown or them. I don't know. Like you know me. Try not to be negative about it, but like, and we're getting too. All right, I'll put it out there. I talk to teams. I talk to people in organizations. I talk to people in organizations in more than half of the Pioneer League organizations. I've got, we'll say I've spoken within 7 Pioneer League organizations with people who have good head on their shoulders and a good feel for things and can speak with confidence. We're not talking interns here. We're talking actual front office, full-time staff. One of them thinks this is going to work out well. That's a 1 in 7. And those are people who would know better. And that's why it seems like, oh, they're dumping on Oakland again. It's not. It's just like the Pioneer League is like, dear sweet summer child, you're new to the indie ball scene. I get your want to expand and you saw a cool opportunity and you're going for it. But like, oh, there's so many concerns here and now you're in so deep. Like, I want it to go well, but like when even the people within organizations don't think it's going to go well, what are we supposed to say about it?
It does feel like, especially even in the Pioneer League, there's 2 different Pioneer Leagues. One that's very pro Oakland and one that's like, now is not the time for this.
You know, it's funny. The one, okay, I was going to start by saying, I don't know the pro Oakland side that you found. It sounds like that's Oakland, but you stopped me at that second part because the now is not the time for this. The pro Oakland person I spoke to was like, I think it's gonna be fine. They said word for word, but I'm not sure if it's the time for this. So like, even they're like, I don't know if this is the time to do this. Like, I don't know, man. I don't think I said anything gives anything away there, but it's just like, I want to be optimistic about it, but it's like, what? That's such a big undertaking. I don't know.
See, I think
and that's not even touching on the fact that I still don't think YOLO's in a favorable spot, but we're going to let that slide for a week. At least they have a ballpark.
The problem here, in the case of Oakland, it's just such a monumental task. You're really scaling the mountain here to get everything to go right, that inherently it's going to garner a lot of criticism. I'm not going to say skepticism, but I'm going to go criticism on it because everything has to be perfect for something of this size to work. And you very well fall into kid running for class president territory where you start promising, oh, well, the school week's going to go to 4 days and we're going to have cotton candy Wednesdays and we're going to put up pool on the roof and we're going to get rid of homework.
It feels like you're pitching an online college, honestly.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? But at the same point in time, it's like you can make those promises, but like you can't reasonably expect to fulfill them all. You could be like, we'll have more theme days during the year. We'll have, on Fridays, the option for dessert after lunch. Those are all possibilities, but like versions of what you said are possible, but not at all what you're promising here. And that's the case here where it's like, well, we're going to have all these community events. It's going to be all Oakland. We got the hiring path for guys that got fired from the Coliseum to go to work here, which I don't really know what the hell they're going to do. At this ballpark, it doesn't really seem like it needs a lot of full-time staff. Even the org itself, I don't really know to what extent they're going to be hiring, but whatever there. It just feels like a lot of lofty promises and demands without the execution. And on some level, I do believe it is possible. And I do believe that versions of most of what they, not all, but most of what they're promising is feasible. But I do think it's also drastically scaled down. And I think being a bit bombastic is helpful to them in the sense of garnering headlines, garnering attention, because it is a big spotlight here, right? You're getting national attention. You're getting a lot of local attention for it. So you might as well take a big swing. I get that thinking, but like when you miss on a swing like that, that's a strike 3 swing. That's a full count cut. You don't come back from it. It's go right back to the dugout and don't come back out again.
And that's a thing. And I think where it loses me and confuses me a little bit, rhyming, is whether we're talking about the national audience that is now curious about this story, or we're talking about the Oakland fan who's willing to invest in this, and judging by opening day sales, there are a bunch, or at least curious about this. They are coming from Major League Ball, and you can say anything about the Coliseum. You can say anything about the standard of Major League Ball at the Coliseum. It is different than Pioneer League Baseball. That is fine. There are different products. Removing that from it, if you want to put your best foot forward, I would suggest considering that maybe simpler and smaller, but executed really well in a way that shows care and shows forward thinking and thoroughness and a thorough understanding of each employee's job in the ballpark and everything that, and follow through versus aiming high, being last second. And because last second, you have to have everything kind of slapdash thrown together and asking people to understand that, well, this will get better. The execution will get better. I think it's easier for somebody to get their head around, well, this was a really good time. It was small. It was very different. But there's room to grow for sure, rather than, well, it was still small, but it was a mess and sloppy and a very, unprofessional experience. I don't know if I need that again. Like, I'm sure they'll get better at it, but I don't really know if they need to. Like, I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe again, I'm negative on it. I don't know. But that's how it's
part of the reason why we keep criticizing it a little bit or keep the light on it is because we understand the farther reaching impact of an Oakland failing with the press it's gotten, with the effect it could have across mainly the Pioneer League, but I'm sure it ripples across the board elsewhere too. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you're playing with a lot more than just a couple people owning a team and some randoms, right? Like, you're playing with well over 2-3 dozen people's lives. And they're coming out there to play ball and have a shot at going back to the majors. And we went through the whole thing of what NY Boulders is before. Mm-hmm. And so, more than that, too, you're also playing with people that are looking to get a start and get a foot in the door in baseball and everything like that. Mm-hmm. So, and thus the community that you've now, hyped up, amped up, and gotten full in on it. You're really playing that game with them. So you failing isn't just on, oh, that's a shame we lost a real fun night out. You failing affects a bunch of different people's lives and affects a bunch of different people's businesses and a slew of careers and the image and reputation of several major organizations. So it's not just an isolated collapse if it goes down. It's going to spread out. And so in that vein, it's, I don't want to say overly protective of what this is, but it's understanding that this isn't just, fire up a new out of the park baseball or road to the show franchise. No, this is real life. This is people's lives. And that you can't just go about just half-assing everything and just kind of hand-waving the critics and going, see, look, we're doing this. And when things work out, go, because we believe in Oakland. It's a lazy excuse out. Instead of going, yeah, we had a plan. This is part of the plan. There's a lack of authenticity to it, and it can't be here.
Yeah, and it's partially, why do we keep bringing it up? I know, I'm sure listeners are a little tired of this now. We probably got a few skip aheads here, but my last point on this would be this, and I'm good to move along. It's my concern. One, it comes why we're talking about so much. Well, because every week there's a news story involving it. And two, because we know the reputation of indie ball. And we know that indie ball's reputation has been slowly improving, and it's been slowly improving in a lot of ways, in spite of a lot of powerful people in indie ball and new people and get rich quick people in indie ball who either hurt the reputation or instead of, going in probably what a lot of people in the know would call the right direction to improve indie ball, or going the wrong way. But there's a lot of people in indie ball who believe in it, who believe in the organizations, who believe in the concepts and the players involved, and have worked so hard to improve the reputation of indie ball for players, for fans, for every which way. And that is very much unnoticed. It sneaks up on you how much the reputation of indie ball can improve from what it was perceived as. Then now, for that to be very much vulnerable in a moment where we know it's going to be more in the spotlight than ever, than at least it has recently, to see someone, put the spotlight onto themselves and a situation they're creating, and it does not seem like it is going to represent well, and it's going to undo a lot of that hard work that was done quietly. It drives me nuts. It feels a lot like it's Bill Buckner. We're late in the game. Why are we left out at first base? This isn't what I'm here for. Like, Buckner's known for letting that ball go through. He had an amazing career. He shouldn't have been out there in the first place. It's not his fault that he was out there. It was a bad situation to be in. Should never have gotten involved with it. But because he was left out there, now he's got the reputation. Not really his fault. It feels like that with indie ball and a lot of the work that people in indie ball have done, where now we're in a bad situation. We're just hoping we don't get one of those that dribble through, because we're left here sort of wondering why. And it worries me, dude. It worries me. I think about this so much. Like,
it's easier. Yeah. It's the bucket of grease when it falls over on the carpet. It's a lot harder to get the stain out than it is to just never
put
have
the lid on the bucket. Yeah. So I don't know. And it's, and for all these reasons, and then some, I wanted to do so well, which is another reason why I get frustrated by potential bad signs. And again, look, it's easy to say we're negative, but I promise you, and this is going to be tooting our own horn for a second, I promise you there are very few people out there who know the ins and outs of like a successful versus unsuccessful organization the way we do, because not only is it the people who know a successful organization or unsuccessful one, we know people in both sides. We do debriefs with, why are you so good at this? Why are you so bad at this? What went wrong? And we know the signs on both sides, and we compare it, and it's stacking up very much one way. That's what I would say, and I'll let it go for now.
Yeah.
But I mean, does that make sense? Because I do sometimes worry, because I do kind of get that from the Oakland side, the Oakland people being like, dude, like, what do you know though? You're out on the East Coast. Like, you don't know Oakland like that. You're just being negative for being negative. And I'm like, it would be way better for us if Oakland does well. Why would I want it to not?
Yeah.
It's just that
fundamentally we're in the independent baseball industry for what little of it exists. Them doing well expands that industry and garners more attention to it. If they do well, we'll talk about them more. A, and B, there'll be more to talk about. There'll be more interest in what we do. It would help us for them to do well. Yeah.
And why am I so hard on the owner? Well, one, because I've said from the jump, I don't trust that owner. And two, I don't blame really the people involved, because I have personally seen how little power just general employees can have underneath certain owners, where I went to Lexington, a place that had very little fan support, had lots of growth to do, lots of brand solidification to do. And the solution to one unprofitable, failing team in the owner's eyes was to bring in and create a second brand on a second team in the same league that people don't understand for 1 year. And that was the idea that we had to roll with. So I get it. I'm not blaming the employees. I'm just, and by the way, it'd be different if there was an owner with a track record, but I think maybe they know something. It's just,
that's the thing. Like, part of me and this will be the last part, and then we'll actually move on because there's a very interesting American Association discussion.
I think it's probably the more interesting of the stories today. Yeah.
Yeah. But I do want to have the experience thing, which is I trust some of the people that work in that organization. We talked to some of the people that work underneath both teams in that ownership group's portfolio, we'll call it. And I have confidence in them to do the jobs from which they're assigned and do them well. But I feel a lot better if they had some more experienced guys around them too to supplement. I'd feel a lot better. And the way I put it is, how often have we talked about the Jackal since John Hunt's gotten hired? There's been peaks of it, but generally, since Burt got hired to be their manager, we haven't said much about it. Now, they actually are, funny enough, in this week's show, in a sense, the museum attached to their stadium open. We'll talk about that later on.
And they also just reduced their parking prices.
Yeah, which is a plus.
There you go.
They have stuff working there. And you notice online now they're posting more and they're showing that they're more active in the Patterson community. They're starting to understand, hey, a large chunk of this community is Puerto Rican, is Latino, and they're reaching out to that. They're making more of an effort to bridge and engage in that culture. Those are all positive things they're doing. Things that didn't happen last year. Corrections being made. So in that sense, there's a lot of positivity there. Now, granted, in a vacuum, there's still concerns, but that's the difference. They have people in there that are making strides, making notable improvements. So, yeah, I think that's kind of where I have before I start to just ramble. Or kind of verge into that territory.
I'm going to try not to, so I'm just going to let it ride.
Okay. So when we go into that American Association discussion, right? That seemed to be interesting. Really came out kind of late. Sportico article came out on Wednesday featuring Josh Schaub and the American Association. It really talks about this growing trend of ballpark development, meaning the ballpark village kind of setup where you have shops, restaurants, other activities, other real draws to the area, supplementing the ballpark itself, essentially using the ballpark as an economic driver and a development driver in the area. And how they point out at one point that a lot of surveys done about the value brought by funding a stadium is skewed based off of where stadiums were built and things of that nature. It actually is a really interesting article just for the economic side of things, but it also explains the mindset and the process of how the American Association really likes to expand. The juicy part, of course, is it listed 4 markets in their footprint that they're trying to get to embrace this trend. We mentioned Waco a couple weeks back, but they're one of them. Jersey Village in Texas as well, Clarksville, Tennessee, and Blaine, Minnesota are the 4 mentioned. There's a possible expansion destinations, but honestly, as weird as it is to say, expansion feels like kind of the B plot in this whole thing. The A plot, really just the way they view the process of developing the markets and the way they want this, I guess, the way they want the acquisition process to go.
I mean, did you want to expand on that, or is it?
I feel like it's a decent spot to break for a second.
I guess the headliner is obviously the areas they're looking to expand to. I do think that the meat of it is the actual process behind it, because as we've seen with other leagues, as we've been talking about, expansion for the sake of expansion doesn't work unless you have an actual strategy before it. And I think the American Association is one. I think that you and I typically feel more confident in their ability to do this, because, I mean, if from nothing else other than the signs that come with the fact they haven't rushed in any expansion recently, I think it would have been very tempting to throw another team down somewhere as like a branch to Cleburne.
Yeah. And
holding off on doing that, I think, was interesting and telling that they're not going to throw something in there as, a placeholder or as a, just for convenience sake. Like, they're looking for serious long-term partners. I think it's fascinating.
I also think, for me, what's interesting is the fact that they really do not shy away from the fact they like the TIF strategy, which for those that are unaware, it's a tax increment fund or tax increment financing, which essentially is taking a public subsidy or some sort of public funding to put towards the construction of the ballpark and the area as a whole, and then recouping that money you spent to construct it through an increased sales tax or hotel tax or some other tax in that area to supposedly break even, which I think on its surface makes sense, but I do question in practice how often that goes the way you want it to go from a more local perspective.
How do you mean?
I just don't know if you get that initial investment back. And I do wonder if, at the initial investment and then further than that, I do kind of wonder. I should just put out front, I really hate the idea of using public money to build a private entity. I really hate that unless there is some sort of agreement, right, to either pay that money back or you're giving a controlling interest for a certain amount of time towards it. Or maybe not even controlling, but a partner or some. I really, I guess that my umbrage is calling it a private-public partnership when it seems like the private's getting the funding and getting a lot of the benefit here, and the public benefit is just so much having the thing there. And it's like, is that beneficial?
And it's the potential recoup, which is that's socializing risk while retaining the benefit for yourself, essentially. And again, rich people love saying, the benefit is the fact that it is, it's an intangible thing. Of course, there's no money coming with that benefit, but they'll point to it also. But it does have the same energy as like, it's an internship. You're being paid an experience. But I think, okay, so generally at the MLB level, which is where there's more research done, the claim and the exchange is you're going to help us pay for this, or you're going to pay for it entirely. Whether that's, a local business, basically a business district around a ballpark or just a ballpark. And you will recoup this, yes, in the tax, but also in the increased revenue coming into the area, yada, yada. They're really, and now MLB and the owners love to put out data that supports that. And they're very quick to show that data anytime they need a ballpark. I think it is telling how few of those ballparks are coming together lately and how much pushback there's been, because it's pretty transparent to see through those numbers. They're fairly manufactured. And in fact, I think in the one case, and I'm not going to say which one it was. I had a feel, I think it was Washington or Atlanta. I just cannot remember which. Unfortunately, I wasn't really ready to bring this one up, but, they found that, a lot of the revenue that was coming to local businesses in that area, the little area, sure, not only though was it going to take a long time to equal what was paid for the ballpark and area, but also those businesses were on property owned by the owners of the team. So there's always something, it feels like. So my general vibe is if you aren't going to be able, it's your business, build it. If I want to put up a restaurant, I'm not going to ask someone else to pay for it. That's not how that works. So, and honestly, if you can't afford to build a stadium, well, then I guess you're not in the stadium building business. I'm sorry. Unfortunately, you don't get to own a baseball team. Yeah. So, that's where my holdup is. I like the idea of American Association expansion. I like generally the markets are looking at this different conversation, but generally I think they're heading in the right direction. I just, I don't buy what they're selling. But again, we can have someone from the American Association on to tell us more about that maybe, but I don't want to be a negative on a negative, but I stand pretty, I just had to pay, my tax bill. So I know how I feel about it.
It's just like, I understand the argument of, well, it's a community asset to have it, but
but it's your asset on the books, my guy.
Exactly, like that. That's
only one spreadsheet gets to keep the asset.
And the thing is, too, then they're like, "Well, I'm taking the risk and running the business." Yeah, but then
but we're paying pretty handsomely for that risk.
Exactly. And it's like, if it winds up not working out, I'm the one that has to deal with the lot that has the stadium just sitting on it before you sell it. So there's no community asset to a decaying stadium.
Yeah. And now, and if you want a real life quick example of this, Gastonia, they gave not only the ballpark, but the land around the ballpark. And I'll rehash a quick thing in a minute of where this gets to be an issue. So they sold it basically to real estate people. They built a ballpark. All right. As promised. Taxpayers at the time, by the way, were not happy about this, but they had a limited say in what was going on. But I do remember that from the very beginning. They end up being like, well, all right, it's happening, whatever. So sure, they support it. The team immediately is financially not doing well because they're not well run. They're being run by real estate people. Then the real estate around the ballpark is not being developed because there's no income from the ballpark to pay for that. There's continued back and forth because now this land, which was, became theirs, like that's not being used. It could be used for anything else. To this day, the land still isn't really being used. There's been talk about it being used and repurposed or whatever else, but that really becomes even a sticking point beyond that, where I know of multiple owners who are interested in taking that property off of that failed ownership group, a year before they collapsed. And they were told no, because the original owner wasn't willing to give up on the property profit. Because for them, again, it was all about the profit. It wasn't about the area. It wasn't about whatever they were saying. It wasn't about helping the community. It was about, well, I still think I can profit off this property, so I'm not going to sell it. I'll sell you the ballpark only with no other profit options. Don't really care what that does for you. So even one who was curious about, like, can we just get parking there? Like, whatever. Like, it becomes, when it's all about the financial incentive for the owner, that's where we start to see problems. That's where we start to see problems basically everywhere. And circling back to, by the way, what I will say as my positive on Oakland is whether they know, God, I hope they know it. I don't see Oakland being profitable. I don't think that's feasible. I mean, the amount of money being dumped into this, how quickly they're going to have to do it, the amount they're going to have to spend on short notice. And then eventually, if they're going to have to build an actual ballpark or not, I don't see this being profitable. And they have said that they are not in it for profit. They are in it for Oakland. So they're going to have a chance to prove it. And so far, that has seemed to be backed up based on the fact that it doesn't look profitable. But we'll see if they're okay with that. That's going to be interesting to watch now.
Yeah. So,
but if you're getting involved through one of these tax things, if you're already talking about it as a business, how am I going to turn a profit on this? How are we going to work this financing? That's where I start to worry, because those are the owners also. While they might have some business sense, they're not as connected to the community. They're not as bought in. It's a budget item. If this thing goes one way or another, they're going to handle it like a business item and not like a community asset that a baseball team is.
And that's
sorry for that. I got there.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. Like they point out Milwaukee as the example of it working on this level, but you point out Gastonia's the counter, and it's like, yeah, and it takes forever, and it's still one developer doing all that work too. So if you're going to tell me it's a community asset, it's a community value to have, and it's going to spur more development in the community, it's like, okay, well, then you want to have that spurred development be for more local vendors then, right? You're going to be more community focused in there. It's going to be not chain places setting up there. It's going to be a local bar and a local restaurant out there instead of having, some general mass market stores. It's going to be more local boutique kind of stores then, right? It never winds up being that way.
Okay. And no, I'm looking at this. Similar mixed use developments have flourished in Milwaukee. Are they talking the Brewers?
Milkman.
Are they? Because they also talk about Los Angeles in the same sentence. That's what got me wondering.
No, I think for that piece there, because later on it goes on to mention like adding the Top Golf and all that in that area. That's all a Milwaukee thing. Well, technically Franklin thing.
Sure?
But
Because in November of 2023, the Brewers ballpark funding plan was looking at a commercial mixed use district.
We may be talking about different parts of the article.
True. Okay. Sorry. I'm just curious because I'm also saying I never use Milwaukee as an example because having Bud Selig involved there made it a whole weird can of worms. So never use the Brewers for an example for anything, but digression. That's fine. I'm on board the Milkmen if it's the example. I'm not on board the Brewers if it's the example. In short.
Yeah, no, I'm using the one later on for Franklin. The one paragraph. An American Association example sits in Franklin. Sits in Franklin, Wisconsin. A development titled Ballpark Commons created on top of the former landfill. It consists of Lux Bay Golf, a top golf competitor, a 4,000-seat Franklin Stadium, 6 baseball fields for youth tournaments, apartments, and senior living hotels, retail, restaurants, bars, and an indoor football facility, a ski hill, and medical and office space. Overall, the $180 million development helped build the stadium on the back of the new development incremental real estate tax dollars.
Okay.
Yeah. It also highlights how they have a lot of different corporate partners and things of that sort to help process.
Which is fine. I'm okay with it being done by corporate partnerships.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What I'll say is I'm pro expansion. I'm hesitant about, one, what this kind of deal means for community, and two, what kind of owner that deal attracts. So there we go. That's my hesitation in a nutshell. Good thing I took 15 minutes to say that.
Yeah, I guess my main takeaway from it is I'm just always wary of putting public money towards a private venture.
Mm-hmm. Especially when the profit isn't public.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I'm of the mindset of, if you're going to do business in a free market, or at least a mostly free market, then as incumbent on the private entity to put the risk forward without some sort of public safety net or public assistance on the matter, unless it is some sort of an essential service.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of ballpark developments and sports complexes, generally speaking, they are not essential services or essential developments. They should be in it on their own. And for that reason, any profit they get should be their own. But if you're going to accept some sort of public money, either that local government should have some sort of board seat or interest involved in it, or should be taking a certain percentage until such a time that the money used to construct everything was paid back, ideally some interest. Essentially, I'm good with the public loan at a low interest rate. I'm good if you're ceding a section of control to the local government in exchange for constructing it. I'm good with all that. But when you're essentially saying, give us some money to build it and you'll get it back in the aggregate, that's not really a benefit to anyone, I don't think, except for the developer.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you there.
On that note, we do have one other, I guess, kind of major conversation to get to before the interview, and then we got just a couple other notes after that. So we want to go to the Mexico conversation now, or?
Yeah, and it won't be that long of one, if I'm honest with you. It's just something to watch type of thing.
Yeah.
Do you have a background on the rule change that happened, or
I have the general bits. Correct me when I'm wrong, or if I did something
do what
wrong.
I can. I'll see if I catch it.
Yeah. So essentially, Mexico is adding / allowing more import players for the 2024 season. Now, granted, that number is going to decrease in the coming years, but it's still a larger increase. It's a 38-man roster. Of that 38-man roster, for the 24 and 25 seasons, 20 can be foreign players. The following two seasons, 26, 27, are going to be 18 foreign players. And then 28 and 29 will be 16 foreign players. Mm-hmm. For context, last year, at least from what I saw, 7 foreign players were allowed per team. If you go back to 18-19, it was 12. So the number has fluctuated over time, but generally speaking, the total number of imports across LMB, which has been 18 teams strong now, goes from 126 guys to 360 guys. Also important to note, what counts as a foreign player versus a non-foreign. If you are a naturalized Mexican citizen or born in Mexico, then you are considered, Mexican player. Otherwise, not a Mexican player. So essentially, what this can lead to is a higher rating of independent league rosters. Now, I would imagine it's more American Association Atlantic League territory. They seem to have more of an LMB caliber type talent level as opposed to the Frontier and Pioneer, although perhaps you'll see some higher echelon talent get plucked from there. But generally, this just affects roster construction and adds another curveball into everything, because now, why would you go? And we do mention it, I believe, in the Tuve interview, and I'm sure it'll come up across other interviews we do throughout the year. But one of the challenges is getting guys to commit to stay on your team now for less pay to play in America versus making a lot more money in Mexico and going there instead and potentially taking 2 or 3 other guys along with them. So now you got to plug those gaps, find a way to replace that talent. And it's one thing to do it in April and May. It's another thing to do it in July and August.
Oh, what I have just a little more context, honestly. I've done as much of a deep dive as I can. It's a little hard to track my Mexican League transactions, if I'm honest. It's just, they're not consistent with how they report them. American teams, when they lose a guy, or maybe he's not under contract at all, so no one's reporting it, but they're inconsistent when they do report it. So it's hard to track. So it takes literally like manually looking up, like, through Baseball Reference and like comparing rosters to, past rosters and stuff like that. So, but by my count, we have over 60 guys currently in the Mexican League who played indie ball in 2023, in all from the major 4 leagues that we talk about. From the post-COVID years alone, we have over 130 right now. The big one that kind of grabbed my attention this week was Courtney Hawkins. Hawkins was set. He was in camp, I think, with Charleston, hadn't signed the contract officially, which is low-key hilarious if you have beef with the Charleston owner, who now doesn't get the payday for him getting signed. Anyway, so that is another massive back on. Imagine that Charleston team with Keon Barnum and Courtney Hawkins. But
that
is right, terrifying. But just that really was the one where I was like, I really got to do the math on this. So if we think about it, I mean, that's 130-ish. I think it was approaching 140 guys over the past 3 years. So like over this past 3 years, I'm figuring if you played, you're a likely indie ball guy if you're not there. That's why I looked that setup. And it's, what does that work out to? I mean, they have, 20 teams? It's a little sketch because one team folded, so maybe we're at 19 technically this year, or is on hiatus. So Mexican League parallels to the Atlantic. So that's a lot. Now they're not all American, obviously, so some of them would have been over there anyway. But I mean, dude, that's a lot of guys that are just indie ball players who are over there. That's far more than we'd be looking at in past years. So I'd say past years, it seems like it's about, if we're looking at the number of people who went from 1 year in indie ball, like being in there one season, to the Mexican League in the very next one, it seems that we've been sitting around 25 to 35. So I simplify it to about 30-ish. And the fact that we're over 60-ish it's notable. Now, what does that mean? I mean, it's something I want to lament. It's good for the guys. They're getting better payday. Love that. Yeah. Frankly, by the way, it's easy to see where this hurts indie ball, right? Because we're losing talent right now. So I'll admit that up front. That's tough. We are getting some younger guys, some experiences they might not get. Does that improve talent level in leagues? Not necessarily, but hey, it's less wondering whether a guy can make it a certain league or not, which is nice. And guys are getting opportunities. So there, I'll push this to you though, which is something I don't think we're thinking about, because everyone I talk to is mostly talking about how much harder it's making things, specifically on the pitching side. I'll put this to you, which is, I've met pretty frequently, probably 20 guys over time that are playing in America who could be playing in Mexico. They might be a fringe guy, maybe they feel like they could, but in reality, they had options and they decided they'd rather play stateside, and these are mostly older guys who have families that it's easier to see their families. Maybe it's guys who they're just more comfortable in America, whether it's like cultural, whether it's language, whatever. Or you just have guys who have made their money and they're less desperate. Maybe they have a small business starting to crop up, as they're getting later in their career. But having that money from a couple of years in the Mexican League has allowed them to be a little more flexible with how they go about their late career. They don't have to retire straight off the bat. They can continue to play a couple extra seasons of indie ball with less pay because of those years. So I would want people to remain open to the idea that this actually might help in a year or two, as we get some guys who, they maybe would have had to call it a career due to just what it takes to play indie ball, even financially, and the strain it puts on people. And now it might give them a little more breathing room and get a couple more years out of these end career guys who are quite good and hold together leagues, especially like the Atlantic League. So I think it's not all lost here. I don't actually think it's going to be as big a negative as it seems to obviously kind of be. But it does shake the tree a little bit on the what are we going to do paying players thing. I mean, the budgets in the Mexican League, I think, aren't something that are going to be competed with by any of the leagues here. But is it, what else can be offered to the players? Maybe that's the conversation. That's something that kind of floated to a couple of people in interviews so far this offseason.
I do think it's an interesting thing. I don't really know what more I have to add in that, but it's something to watch out for. I do wonder how much of a talent drop off you see from this.
60 is a lot. When you break it down to 30, and it's mostly, we're not talking Pioneer League guys, so it is almost entirely Frontier League and American and Atlantic. So that will give you 26, 28, 38 teams. So it's like one extra. Yeah, and I'd also say it's not necessary. Yeah, I mean, generally it is kind of shaking out that way. It didn't seem so clear up front to begin with, but like when this all started, it is kind of coming out that way. You're right. But is that the worst? I don't know. It depends. Because in my head, I'm like, is Charleston notably harder to watch as a team, as a fan, and hard to enjoy because you have Keon Barnum and not Keon Barnum and Courtney Hawkins? No. Damn, you'd love to see it. But now we're having a conversation. Damn, we could have had it, So
that's the thing. Like, in the way, obviously understanding the way the business works, the roster isn't really the draw for most people. And so as a result of that, it doesn't really shake out to the general public. But again, if you're listening to this, you're either in industry or a sicko. So from that perspective, from a strictly baseball ops perspective, it is a notable challenge,
it's definitely challenging the front offices. Yes. From a fan perspective, it's one thing, but front offices are grinding. Yeah.
Yeah, because now how do you, like you said, what can you offer that Mexico can't? And really, I think it comes down to quality of life. But then again, if you're a ball player, it's like, hey, the money means a lot to me. It keeps my career going for maybe a year or two longer than it otherwise would have. A. B. Simply put, it's not like you're exactly living on the high life here. If you're in indie ball, right? I mean, you're still going bus to bus across country. You're still, have the however few thousands a month that you paid. You're still not exactly living your best life there. It's just like, okay, if you prefer being in America or Canada versus being in Mexico, then yeah. So I guess it depends market to market, but that's, it's a tough sell. It really is. And so just through that lens alone, I don't really know how you counter that as baseball ops guy, because you're just limited on what you can physically offer.
Agreed. I mean, if guys want money to take the money, they're gonna take the money. That's fine. Again, get your bag for sure. I mean, I'm so dumb. I forget what the Mexican League footprint looks like. It's so big. I was like, do they not have take buses down there? No, like.
They fly.
Leon and Quintana Roo, they're in the same division, and it's a 24-hour drive. So yeah, sorry, I'm glad I didn't say it out loud, but I did just out myself on it. But I did have the moment of like, I guess, yeah. No, it's so big. Mexico's big. Ryan concedes Mexico is a large country.
All right. On that note, we'll go to the interview now. We got a couple other small news stories on the flip side of it, but let's talk a little bit about our interview. We have Kevin Tuve this week, head scout with Boulders. I wanted to let you all know about the tryout they have coming up in the first weekend in May, but we also got to look a little bit further into this new age of frontier Can-Am scouting. Talked a little bit about what you look for in a player, what a player could do to help their odds of getting signed, what hurts their odds of getting signed, and some of the challenges that are facing the front offices and indie ball scouting in the current day and age, I suppose.
Yeah, man, it was a fun conversation. I know you've had Kev on before. I haven't actually had the opportunity to talk to him before, but it was interesting to see. I like it. We've had a fun bit of coverage this year. We did talk to several baseball ops people because I attract nerds, but on like very different levels and different organizations and different situations, like in all with very different challenges, like from Gastonia's unique challenge, but like being a top team with the issues they're having, to Lake Country, who they've struggled, but then Lake Erie, who's at the bottom of the standings, like that's been fun. So now transitioning over to like a scouting side with Kevin and his unique experience in the Frontier League with some Can-Am background is like an added level of it too. So it's I'm glad that I've been here for these two. This has been fun. I feel like it's informing my my preseason work that I'm putting out right now.
Yeah, that's the thing that I like about the best. And I think something that everyone gets out of it is it gives you a different context when you look at the season as a whole, when you start to look at some of the challenges and some of the ways things go behind the scenes and everything that goes into it, and just different mindsets in building a roster and what and who has a say in how that roster gets constructed. So on that note, I guess we'll throw it right to that interview. Here is our conversation with Boulder head scout Kevin Tuve. We're trying out something new this week by looking at scouting. Welcome back to the show, Boulder's head scout, Kevin Tuve. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, fellas. It's great to be back with you, and that must mean that baseball's right around the corner.
It really does, because I remember last night I went ahead, said, let me go through the interview we did last year, so that way I know what to ask, what not to ask, so that we don't have repeat. And I checked it. We did this interview on April 12th last year, and it came out on the 15th. So nearly a exact year has passed. So it's becoming a bit of a spring tradition.
I love joining you guys talking baseball. I'm pretty pumped, to be honest with you.
Exactly. This time we switched up the co-host. It happens every once in a while. You got to switch them out,
For sure.
You're not getting the best of me, I think, because I got to be honest, this is the second time I've heard that intro done, and this is the first time I got the trying out pun. So look, if I'm off, then I don't know what to tell you, because that is not a good sign for us this interview. But I'll do my best. Oh, yikes.
Look, we never get you at your best, so I mean, this isn't any different from normal.
I'd love to know what my best looks like, but hey, that's why we got to get interview guests on here, because they're far more interesting than whatever like monkey with tambourines is going on up in my brain, man.
Just a living Simpsons skit, aren't you?
More ways than you could ever imagine. All right.
Oh god. I guess we should actually start talking about baseball now, and I guess we'll open it up with just on a little bit about last year and last year's team. Obviously, we talked about a lot of different tryouts and stuff you had for last year, but the college one in June and then the one that you have every spring. So just judging off of the results from last year, what exactly is it that you and TJ are looking for going into the tryouts this year? And what were some of those takeaways from last year?
Great question. So first off, as far as last year goes, we ended up signing a couple guys, including Brandon Backman, who ended up pitching with us. He had some injuries, but St. John's kid really pitched well for us, and a couple other guys that were able to jump into our roster in and out throughout the course of the spring. Also, I believe 9 guys from the May tryout were actually signed by other clubs. Nice. Believe it or not, throughout the year, as we kept track of some of those as well, not counting the guys that signed on their own, but guys that we actually helped get signed. So, as far as what we're looking for, definitely you look at arms from that side, guys that can throw strikes. No secret on that. And then, you're also looking for, versatility. Is there someone that can play the infield, outfield, that is someone that can get on base, but defensively is someone that blows TJ and his staff away, over the course of the May 3rd, 4th weekend, that is worth coming aboard with us for sure.
Definitely. So one of the things I'm always curious about is when we talk about a lot of tryouts and stuff like that, maybe people don't know exactly what goes into that tryout, what they should know going into it. So just talking a little bit about that, how does the tryout process work itself? Are we talking drills? Are we talking bring your stats and your data? What's that exactly looking like?
So it's I think that's a pretty interesting point. So first off, the stats we will look at, TJ will look at as they're performing at the tryout. He'll pull them up and he'll take a look. We provide them with a statistical packet that has as much analytics on it as we can find on each player. It'll have information. Now, as far as the players coming to the tryout, we always tell these guys to come and be who they are. Don't try to show off. Don't try to do something you don't normally do to catch our eye. Be exactly who you were, for the course of your collegiate season or pro season coming from last year, released in spring training, any guys like that as well. Be who you are. And I think that's a big thing, because a lot of guys will try to put on a show and they'll not put out what they really intend to. The second thing also is, the idea of coming in with an open mind, coming in with, a lot of hustle. You can see guys that are really pumped to try to make this club, and then you'll see guys that kind of dilly-dally in and kind of go in with that attitude, I'm not going to make it anyway. I don't even know why I came. You'll see some negative. So there's both sides. So we always try to get everybody in the morning to be positive. I'll get them to crack a smile as they're coming in and registering or checking in, I guess, at 7:30 in the morning on the 3rd, that Friday. And so I think there are distinct things that we are looking for as they enter the gates, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm just curious a little bit on the more mental side there. How is that different from a scouting perspective? Because obviously, for mobility-wise, you have measurables, eye tests, things like that, where you could go, all right, this guy's good at this guy can hit his spots, this guy, he's got really impressive stuff. But the mental aspect's a bit more difficult to really discern. And obviously, I think it's one of those things that's a little bit more difficult to really tell on one or two viewings.
Oh, 100%. It's always difficult over 2 days, or these teams that do 1-day tryouts, to me, blows me away. Cause that's really tough to see something one day. The guy isn't feeling great that day, and all of a sudden you rule him out and say, well, he can't play. Over 2 days. Definitely we hope that one of the days, if not both, obviously they shine for each player. But, from a scouting perspective, mentally, you want to make sure that they are, the guy who's got an open mind and who's willing to run through a wall for you. And there are players that walk through that door that I've seen between now and when I started doing this way back, in Rockland anyway, in 2013, there are guys that show up with the right attitude that the manager, whoever it is at the time, is floored, and is like, that kid is he wants to be here. You don't see it enough as the years go on, but you do see it. You do see it.
Definitely. Definitely there. Before I get too deep in the weeds, Ryan, if you want to hop in here, give you a chance to ask away.
You kind of actually hinted at where I was heading there next, so I appreciate you doing that and stopping short, because I would have been left here sitting slack-jawed. But instead, I'm slack-jawed, but I do have thoughts. So the thing that sort of hits me with tryouts across the board these days, I'm always interested to see where different people's heads are. And you sort of mentioned how, are they bringing their stats, or they're bringing their data, is how much, I guess, I know everyone's different. I'm going to put the caveat in there, but how much do you guys seem to be balancing that look at the data versus, is a guy having a good day or a bad day? Are there situations where you like the numbers a guy might have, but you're not necessarily impressed by, who the guy you're seeing in front of you, as weird as it sounds, like better on paper? And is there basically, if you show up to one of these with good data, but you don't perform, how much of a chance do you still have? Because that's the weird middle ground I'm always fascinated with.
Well, that's a great question. So first off, the data part, I'll address that first. TJ is very big with data as far as, he looks up everything. As far as analyzing, I never worked for a manager that did more analyzing of data, and he does use the data. He doesn't just breeze past it. He's old school, but he's also got a very good knowledge of sabermetrics. So he does go and look at a lot of stuff, more than the average manager, I think. But you make a good point. So if the player shows up, and doesn't have that good day / 2 days for us, but has good data, otherwise, I don't know 100%, whether that's going to negatively affect them, but I got to say it's definitely not going to help them. Only because, they're big on those 2 days in front of them. If they see, guys will, like I had a coach today from Florida check in and say, hey, this guy's going to be registering for May. Keep an eye on this, this, and this. So we'll put it in the notes and we'll alert TJ of it. But then we see the guy, and sometimes, that velo is nowhere near that 88 to 91. Or you see, we do a lot more invite tryouts in Rockland than a lot of teams, but because of all the other competition and a lot of the other tryouts, we open this one up also as an open out. If there are guys that are interested at this point, we're in the final couple weeks. So you will see some guys with, maybe a little more raw talent than harness talent come into this thing. But I definitely think, to answer your question, I think that, it's important to be able to get enough rest and get your game on and do what you do normally, going back to that, because the stats itself will not get you, a spot in spring training with any team unless you do something in those 2 days to impress them.
Backing up to more, I guess, the practical side of things here. This is my first rodeo being on NY Report while we're talking to you. So this is, while this may be nothing new to Nick, it's all new to me. Who is this? Just, the Boulders staff at this, or how many people are you bringing in from the outside?
So it's a great question. So what we're going to do is we're bringing someone in from Baseball United, the organization that has players playing overseas in the Middle East. Carlos Mirabal, who does work with that organization, will be at our workout. He's probably going to be throwing BP on day one. He's going to be there and looking at players as he does a lot of scouting for Baseball United. We also have Jonathan Castillo, who is in his third year helping the Boulders out with tryouts and, with scouting players during the year. Been with Caesar Prescott of the New York Yankees, been with Tampa Bay, who's a big name in New York City as far as scouting goes with the Yankees. He just retired, I believe, 3 years ago. And he worked with the Tampa Bay Rays. That's how I met him many moons ago, probably about 2011, 12, and just until recently. So John is awesome about placing players. He's got, we mentioned in the pregame, we talked about Claiborne and some of the other organizations, Billy Horn and Brooks Carey. He really works a lot with Jamie Keefe, a lot of the other managers and coaches around, and is able to grab guys, keep an eye on them, and say, hey, if it doesn't work out with the Boulders, he stays and talks to every single guy after. He's there an hour after the tryout talking to these guys. I mean, he's like, he's really thorough. Jonathan is. So he's there too. So we tell the players, you have two opportunities. If it doesn't work out for the Boulders and their coaching staff, you have other opportunities. So it's not just like we throw you in the garbage and that's it. You are going to be watched, and John is very big on placing players, and he does it every spring. He really does. So that's the lineup of who's we're planning to have there.
Oh, okay, cool. So that's sort of the whole crew. That's good. Yeah, I like that. I like the vibe of, even if we're not the home for you, it doesn't mean we won't do our best to help you find something. That's good. I know and it's interesting how far that goes aside, I guess, how far that goes just within this specific industry. I feel like, Nick, in the last week or two, I think we might have discussed that on the pod of how it's the people who are not just, tossing you out with the trash and leaving you on the curb. It's the people who are trying to find you a new spot. It's that tend to succeed long term. So interesting to hear, backing that up. We don't sound dumb. Nice, Nick. You got any thoughts here? I'll kick back your direction.
Yeah, I mean, one of the routes I wanted to go with is last year we were talking a little bit about guys throwing overly hard because we're talking about, there's a lot more relievers out there than starters are out there. So on one hand, I am curious to see if you've seen any shift in that, or that's still been pretty constant. But more than that, though, one of the red flags was always like, oh, well, now you have some sort of arm injury on the record. Now maybe teams are going to be a little bit more 50-50 on taking you up. I just am curious, like, what are some other red flags in a player, and what are some, I guess, the opposite of that, green flag, you think, where you're like, that's something I really like to see on the resume about a player?
Well, it comes into play a lot because many times we'll have a guy. So pitchers, for example, will throw a light pen, say on day one when we see these guys. And then day two, when they come in that Saturday to check in, they'll throw live to hitters. And you see a huge difference in velos. Whether it's now, whether it's the college kid that hopefully he's been playing in a men's league that graduated, in May, and now it's June 21st, and we're bringing guys in. We assume they've been throwing. We don't know. But that's a good point, because if there's a history of an injury there, the managers are probably going to veer away. The workers' comp is such a big thing. It's an issue with these teams, in independent ball. And so I know that whole idea of while there might not be a pitch count, they're being very careful, because there are a lot of arm injuries, as you and I know, and elbow. And it's becoming a thing, as they say, going up from here up to MLB. So I totally agree with the idea of being very cautious, on one side, and then on the other side, it's indie ball, so we're going to air it out too and see, if a guy wants to come back for the 7th inning and he's ready to go, he's going to come back. I would think. Yeah.
Can I hop in? I'm sorry, Nick.
Sure, go for it. Because I seen you were getting excited.
Yeah, he just ran right into something else I'm hoping to bring up in the same episode this is airing. So, it's all coming together. It's Ryan's time to shine. All right. So I've been thinking about this, and sorry if this isn't tryout related. We can get to back, I promise. But
sure.
From what you're seeing, there's so much talk about the injury issues with pitching right now in baseball, and I was really racking my brain. I feel like I'm not seeing it as much at the indie ball level. I texted some of the managers I talk to more frequently, and they all seem to say they really haven't had the number of UCL injuries and elbow injuries that, is typical at the MLB level right now. Now, do you think that is because maybe it's younger guys with less wear, or it's a different way of, different approach? Or, is it, and it's crossed my mind because someone said it, literally a thing of you shy away from a guy with an elbow issue because of workers' comp, which is something we haven't discussed on the pod, Nick, but I do think it's an interesting note to look at because it's so specific to indie ball.
I think it's, first off, the Frontier League is a younger league. So you talked about guys with less innings under their belt, although these college coaches, some of them have really tacked, and maybe it's a good thing, tacked a lot of innings on some of these kids that we see. But I think a lot of them, it's a younger league. They're younger arms. I just don't think that they have, how shall I say it? I don't think that they have the mileage on the car that these older guys do have. Maybe in the American Association, Atlantic League, they may see more than we do. But I think you're right. I can't say in the last couple of years in our division, or at least with our team, that I've seen many issues like that with the elbow and arm over the years in the Can-Am League, maybe. But I think you're right. A lot of the guys here are younger. They're this is a younger league now. It's very different than my previous life and our previous life in the Can-Am League, as you guys know. So I think that's part of it. I do like that in indie ball that there's no pitch count usually that I know of. So I like that managers can, air it out a little bit, and maybe that's building the kid's arm up. I don't know. But I will say some of these college kids come to us and they've been pitching since February, and the amount of innings that they've pitched is ungodly. It's wild, and I've talked to some of them about that. So, yeah.
Especially, I know some of the seniors that come out because they have that. Yeah, you see it in the College World Series, I feel like every year, of a guy who throws some wild number, and it's like, well, it's his last pitching, it's his last outing. And in the back of my head, I'm like, yeah, but not ever. Right. He's going to throw somewhere, unless my guy's going straight into, a CPA situation, and he's going to be doing your taxes next year. But I think for the most part, we're looking at guys who will be once again picking up a baseball and not all that much time. So it's funny that those college kids do come in with more wear and tear sometimes than people would realize. So, thanks. I appreciate you letting me wrap it up real quick, because I think it's fascinating. Yeah.
And in total
back to you. I did intercept you.
And in total fairness, they may not be a CPA. They very well could be selling real estate too.
That is the popular move.
It is. As I always say, when we see a guy that's disappeared for 2 years, I guess he went to sell some houses.
The math checked out.
A funny story on that, and it's an aside, and I promise it'll be fast. But I will say we had a guy actually join the NYPD because we have our exhibition on the night of the 4th at 6:30, which of course you guys are more than welcome in. Yeah. And you will see, they would have a shortstop there, and he was a guy that came from our tryout many moons ago, and up until I'm not sure if he's still playing, but he was on the NYPD team, so it was kind of cool to see him before a number of games. Yeah. So.
Yeah. They really stacked with ringers.
That's it.
They stood outside the tryout and said, "How hard were you throwing?" Only 75. Well, I got this opportunity for you.
For sure.
They're staking that out now.
They're like, yeah. They know those guys can pass the physical fitness requirements. They're like, "Oh, you look like you could do 28 push-ups in a minute."
100%. Yeah. He was soft.
Yeah. The one other point I have on the arm bit that Ryan was talking about I also wonder a little bit too if it's just the kind of miles that are on the arm, right? Because you're seeing guys that are in the higher affiliated levels and the MLB level, they're probably throwing in the high 90s, mid 90s fairly regularly, while on the independent level, you're probably looking more low 90s, high 80s. Correct. And that's a world of difference for what's going on the arm.
Yeah. Use the Jacob deGrom thing there. That's exactly right. They're not the wear, and that's a good point. The wear and tear is not what it could be. So it definitely helps to preserve their arms, especially if, they want that opportunity. Most of them do to get out of there and get signed. The less injuries, the better chance you have. And those flags come up and then it's like, maybe we shouldn't purchase a certain guy because he's got a history. So that's a good point too. It's what type of mile. I agree with that.
Yeah. It's always something there. I'm just going to circle back to, is there any other kind of either good or bad thing that immediately pops up on a resume for a player going into the trial? Obviously, once you get there, you can determine some things here, but just walking in the door, is there anything that really kind of pops?
I'll add a little thing too, like anything that might be under the radar, like that maybe people might not think would jump out, but seems to be jumping out to you. Sorry, Nick. Again, you and I lined up on questions a little bit there.
Oh, that's yes. The answer is yes. I would say I've had coaches. I've been coaches. If you remember the name Curtis Pride, who played with the Expos, I remember him calling me once, and he was upset at a particular player. Can't remember who it was. Doesn't matter. I remember him saying, "Don't sign this guy. He's coming, and I don't. He's all the talent in the world, but you don't want him on your team." So you get some coaches will check in and be honest with you like that. We appreciate that, of course. It's kind of an unorthodox situation, but yeah. There's definitely, if they have trouble, if there's been substance abuse, if they've had trouble with the law, we've seen it, you're going to see it eventually dealing with people, if there's that X factor, sometimes if a guy is that good, we will get a call and say, hey, these are the pluses, these are the minuses, maybe you can fix that. And sometimes, if anybody could, TJ's that guy that I think would be great for that type of thing. But at the end of the day, you want to have as less amount of baggage as possible, because remember, these guys have to get the camp. So if there's any on their record that we find out about it and they can't get in, that does the team no good. So not that it happens often, but we give everybody the opportunity. But at the same time, we know that there are the X factors there about personality. That's a big thing. These teams all want to have that clubhouse. That's very. It's like a symphony. You do not want to have 2 or 3 guys that everybody hates and can't wait for them to go. So I think that X factor is important when those are the things you don't see on the sabermetric sheet.
Yeah, it definitely goes back to just proving the importance of having relationships in this game and how much having 1 or 2 guys really go to bat for you, pardon the pun, can really go ahead and help you out.
Always. Well, there are so many managers and coaches that I've come across. You guys touched on it earlier about helping guys move on and to another team. I remember, guys I've worked with and guys I've seen, or like Brooks Carey, Jamie Keith, so many different guys, Billy Horn, they will look out for you and say, hey, there's a guy here. I think would be a great fit for Rockland. Or, hey, that to me is the stuff that no one ever gets to see. And that's not in the paycheck and no one talks about it. But I'll tell you, you guys did. And I will say that is, I always admire that. It's not about our team. And I'm not saying every manager, does this. But a lot of the ones that I seen and worked with, and with way back to Brian Dahlback, I was with 2010. He did it back then. Hey, it's a good fit. And I was always like, as a rookie doing this, like, well, why are we helping out, the Brockton Rocks at the time, or the Worcester Tornadoes? Why are we well, it's also about the personalities of the game. And this guy lives in Massachusetts. He'd be a great fit for Brockton. He's going home. I'm all about that too. So I think it's a great point that you guys brought up, because I don't think I've ever even been able to think to mention that. And that's beautiful.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that a little bit. It's just like when you have local kids, because we talked a little bit about it earlier with like some of the CACC schools having all those really local and like lower New York, upper New Jersey part. As having those kind of local presences, I guess, ideal for the team. Obviously, like that's not the be all and end all factor. Being a good ball player is priority one, but even still, being able to have some local talent, I imagine, is nice to have to the roster.
Oh, for sure. Is it gonna? I think it's a little overblown as far as the like help at the gates type of thing.
Yeah,
it could maybe in one of the Midwestern towns, but in New York, I don't know that. I mean, it's nice. Yeah, you'll sell some more tickets a little bit, but it's not. I think it's also the personality of the team. I think it's great for the story where it is a guy that actually lives in Rockland County, or it's a guy that actually lives in Sioux City that's playing for Sioux City. So I think that's a big thing, but I don't think it's really going to show ticket sales wise as much as the outsiders might think. Hometown boy, everybody's going to come and see this. So I agree with you. It's an interesting thing. But I think it's I think the story's great. I think it's great to have some local flavor in there too, just for so many, even for PR stuff, and to be able to go out and sign autographs during the rain delays. These are guys that maybe people know, and hey, it's Justin. Look, hey, it's Mike. And that's really cool to have that as well.
Yeah, definitely there.
Ryan,
I was gonna say you look like you want to jump in, so I'll let you jump in real quick.
You also got in my other wheelhouse, which is community affairs side. Like I've always said, when in doubt, if there's a toss up, you want to go with the community affairs guy, because it's always nice to have someone to visit the kids' hospital or do the autographs at a weird time. If 30 minutes before the game, you want a guy who's not gonna be mad that you're messing up the routine. Well, you also know there's a 1 in 5 chance he ends up starting. What are we talking about? So, that definitely clicked. I've heard from people in a couple organizations have mentioned that, if someone's got to go up, not to the majors, but from level to level, and they're not entirely sure who to go with, they will ask, like, who's the guy that you like to have as, like, who's the community affairs guy who's doing the events? Yeah. More often than not, that's the one who ends up getting the call.
Oh, definitely. I mean, Patrick Kivlahan, the ex-big leaguer, comes back last year. He's a Rockland guy. He grew up in West Nyack, literally right there. And, he was awesome. I mean, people did come to see him for the most part, but other than that, he was just such a good role model for the local kids that he works at facilities and they knew him. And, like you said, as far as appearances go, I mean, a guy like Pat was, who went into school administration now in high school, but and I think he is coaching, but here's a guy who was great to have as a local. So I agree with you. You've got to have some flavor from the city you're in, and they will go for the local guy as far as, when push comes to shove. A lot of times they will, even when rookies go, they'd love to have guys that don't need to be housed and they're local,
And I wasn't sure you wanted to do a follow-up on it, but
no, it's all good. I keep interrupting you, so I keep trying to give it right back to you, so I don't completely burn whatever train of thought you're rolling with.
This is a good back and forth we're having. It's
look at us, like a real podcast.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, because having a guy like Kivlahan there, ex-big leaguer guy who's been around the game for a while, I imagine that's good for the clubhouse to set a good tone in there and really set the example you want for both some of the younger, newer guys to the frontier, and also guys that maybe have been drifting around for a little bit, or that you believe like they're good ball players, they're going to help the team, but maybe they need to just kind of get a little more professional.
100%. We had Tucker Nathans last year, who's been through the war. Yeah. Affiliated, he was in indie ball, guys like that who've been through it, in the past. Marcus Nidifer, junior. I mean, Jared Edmondson, who's now, we talked about up in New England, guys like that who've been through it were great role models. And we always had really good clubhouses in Rockland because, I think all the managers, Jamie, Keefe, TJ, I think they knew that you had to have a clubhouse. And that's something that people don't realize too, that, you know, you pull the pin on that sometimes in different teams, you could ruin, one player could change the whole makeup. So I agree with that. It's like a family. You're there with them for, you know, I don't know, 5-6 months, whatever it is. So definitely something to think about when it comes to, you know, chemistry and locality as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, culture is just so important when you're going on like 5-6 hour push trips on the regular. Having to be trapped around people that are just generally unpleasant or that, you know, or you just don't get along with, it starts to turn to torture, and then that starts to affect every other thing.
And these managers are really good. You know, again, another thing that goes unsaid. I mean, these managers are, when they make a living doing this, and they've been there 2, 3, 4+ years. They understand exactly what you just said. And there'll be times where, you know, I've been with teams over the years, and you get there and you're like, "Where's player X?" And they're like, "Nah, he's not going to work out. You know, he's done." You'll see that they have to do that early, especially that first road trip, because it always strengthens. You know, like our one of our owners, our GM Sean Riley, always says, the road is a big deal. It's important because you really start to see the bonds on the road, you know, in the beginning of the season of coming together, you know.
That's really it. Yeah. Ryan, you want to hop in there and go for something, or should I continue on?
I was going to let you keep rolling. Anything I have hanging is a bit off topic, so I'm going to try to.
Because
I'll do my very best to keep it on topic. I'll let you go for now, and then I'll completely steer this thing in the wrong direction later.
Okay, I was just going to ask, like, what are some of the, I guess, similarities or differences you see between like Division II, Division III guys, NAIA guys, D1 Pro? Like, obviously, they're similar in some ways, but I'm curious to know like more about like how each group kind of grades out.
I would start to say, you know, to answer that question, I would say with the D1 kids, you see a lot more athleticism. You really see these guys being able to do more than one thing at a high level. And I know that sounds very elementary and maybe a little corny, but to be honest, it plays out. You can tell. And then that's not to say there's not that NAIA kid or D2-3 kid that comes. We had a kid, Joe Danino, who pitched at some Division II school in Connecticut and comes and not only got signed by us, but the Diamondbacks had him in A-ball for 2 years before injury. You know, he was a lefty, threw a great curveball. But yeah, the whole point is, you know, I just think as you drop down in divisions, you'll see guys that work real hard. But I don't know if their talent would it's just tough. It's tough, you know. There is, you know, we encourage the NAIA D3s, D2s to come because there's so many kids nobody's seen before, and there will be somebody that a manager like TJ Stanton or you know, some of these other guys will look and say, you know what, that guy can play for me. He can pitch he can help us here. And it may not be May 3rd, it may be June 3rd. So, you know, I definitely think as you drop down, you know, and again, I don't know if that's answering the question sufficiently enough, but I would say that it's more about being able to do more than one thing at just a higher level. You can tell the D1s and the top D2 kids, you know, in that June workout for sure. You know? Yeah,
no, that's kind of where I was getting at, because I mean, I know obviously you have a lot of good players at D2, D3. You don't go on to play at the college level if you're not a good player, but you know, I just find it curious. Like sometimes you got these guys that are just totally different worlds because of just the division they are in. And I definitely can see that with the athlete perspective. Although I do wonder on some level if some of these guys, and it's weird to say because if you're at a Division I school, you should have the work ethic put in there. But if you kind of come in thinking, all right, well, natural ability can kind of carry me a little bit further, right? Versus guys on the D2, D3 that may not have the higher ceiling, but they kind of know like, hey, I have to keep working because if I take even a day off, I'm not going to be around here that long.
Yeah, I mean, we've had kids. I can think of a couple catchers over the years. We've had kids who were at a lower school division, shall we say, because of the fact that they're not students, they were players. And so sometimes it's about the grades where a kid will be, you'd say like, wow, he could play for this, but he doesn't have he's not a student, you know, he's an athlete. And that's okay. You know, we don't have to pass, you know, long division, as they say in indie ball, you know. So you just never know. There's a lot of weird cases. Plus, with the COVID years and all that, you see a lot. Yeah, that messed up everything. So you have kids that were in college 5-6 years. Like, what is that? And so it changed the whole outlook. But that's always the more, I don't want to say the more exciting group, but a lot of times these are guys that have been. It's like they're fresh. Nobody's seen these guys, so sometimes it's easier to make a decision in May because you see the flaws on somebody earlier. Where in June you may not, and you say, you know what, I want to see more of these guys on the second day of that tryout, on the Saturday or the Sunday, and see them live. So to answer your question, and I apologize for not answering it before.
That's all good.
We do usually take BP, do some infield, outfield to 60, catchers, pop times. We do all that on day one usually. And then we'll have them set up in teams when they roll in on day 2, which would be Saturday the 4th. They would play live. Now that could change depending on the rain. It is May in New York, so who knows? Yeah. But on a nice day, as if even if it's like cloud cover like today, we would most likely do that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Obviously, it's always interesting to see when you get the players that they didn't go to play school. So those are always the interesting guys there. It's always something fun there. So Ryan, if you want to go and take it from there, if not, I think I have one follow up on it. But
I do have a follow up, and it's a weird one I've noticed, and it's tough for me because sometimes I feel like I've been following any ball forever. Sometimes I feel like it's been about 20 seconds. But if I've noticed at least a trend over the past couple of years that I see guys who went to what you would consider, major conference D1 schools seemingly adjusting slightly worse than guys who even went D2 or went to I always go back to my Sun Belt as my go-to mid-major conference, one of those schools where, and I wonder what it could be. I mean, I've seen face to face that sometimes it's just, the living accommodations and the standard of play and standard of field and, how guys are being handled, as a kid versus as an adult now on a pro team. But has that been something you've noticed? I mean, across the Frontier League as well? Is this something I'm completely crazy on, or is there maybe something to that?
No, I think there's something. I mean, the kids that go to the Division I colleges don't have, the learning curve could be a lot. It could be a lot harder to adjust because you don't have that. I mean, you're facing D1, you're facing top. Not again, nothing on D2, but you're facing that much better of an athlete every time you take the field. Whether it's a pitcher, whether it's an opposing hitter, if you're an arm. I think the learning, the opportunity there to make an impact right away is there. But if you don't get it off to a good start, I think mentally it could also be, the way it is now. I think it could really beat a kid up who's used to being the horse and used to being the top dog. And now all of a sudden he's not performing well, but he still wants to play independent. Well, I should say, wants to play pro ball. Yeah. And so you wonder and there's a lot of kids where that happens, where they just never had the career they were supposed to, but they have the ability. So I think that's where the indie ball managers and coaches really have to take a look at some of these guys, and not with a tryout of 300 guys. I'm talking about a smaller tryout that they can look and actually see the person run around and do what they do, and not just be, one of 88 outfielders that show up, So I think there is truth to that for sure.
All right. Hey, anytime I get even a little bit of a "you're not totally crazy," it's a good day for me. So
they're rare days too.
Very, very rare. I'll go. Nick, you can go back. You said it's just something pretty related, so I won't fully pull it my direction yet.
Yeah. Oh, I wish.
Or did I force you to lose it? Oh,
you did
I ruined
a little
it.
bit.
Yeah, I know who I am.
Give me 1 second to try and think of it. If you have something else to throw in there, throw it in there.
We'll head just a little bit off the reservation. Then we'll go looking at the current sort of build of the New York roster as you have it so far. What's something that you're excited about? What's something that you think is a little bit different from what y'all brought to the table last year?
I think the fact that we have, some of our big bats back who may not have, performed the way they did 2 years ago. I think they're going to have big years. And I'll tell you, some of these guys, I mean, they've been working so damn hard in the off season, whether it's playing in Australia, whether it's playing, what they've been doing to put numbers up. I think they're going to have big years. They had years, but they didn't have big years in their eyes. They would tell you that, maybe the year before we put up some big time offensive numbers. I think they will again. And I think that some of the rookies are guys to watch as well. Without mentioning names too specific early on, I think TJ has a roster here that is pretty well balanced, with that young Frontier League rookie trying to make the squad in spring training versus a guy like Chris Quitzer, who's been around, or David Binsky, who's, they've played in a lot of pressure situations over their careers, and Austin Dennis. So I think, the baseball smarts with them is there, and I think they're going to have, a big year. I'm excited for this team offensively. I definitely am. In this league, pitching wise, you just you don't know. Of course I'm excited. But at the same time, you have younger, you have a lot of Can-Am League. You kind of knew all of it. Frontier League is younger and it's more MLB geared toward, which is good for everybody involved. So I think it's going to be a big year. I think, talking to TJ, we have some new coaches coming in that I know are very analytical and I'm excited to get them, going with our baseball operations staff. I've got 13 data analytic majors and a high school guy in there too, ready to go.
Okay.
Coming from all over, from University of Wisconsin to Buffalo. I've got them, and I'm more than excited on getting these kids hooked up with these coaches so that we can help these players out even more with statistics and ultimately getting them anything we can to get them to affiliated baseball. So, I'm excited about that. So I would say that, and I would say the offense juggernaut that I think we're going to put together this year. I think these guys are going to have a big year. I do.
I'll put the call out here if to anybody from the Atlantic League side of things to let me know if I'm completely off base, because the one thing I'm feeling like, Nick, is like there's in the American and the Frontier, there's almost like a bit of a analytics arms race going on, like we saw in MLB a few years ago, where everyone's bringing in interns and their own college people and things like that. And in a way, I haven't really seen translated in the Atlantic League or even in like a different form. So it's interesting to see it taking off in those two leagues instead of the Atlantic. But
it definitely seems right. Like just to build on that, like even when I look on like teamwork and stuff, I don't really see analytical intern openings or anything like that. And obviously not everybody posts it there, but as just a general rule of thumb, you figure at least one team would post something there. And it just no one ever does. But yeah, we do talk to a lot of people from the American and the Frontier that do the analytic work, and seemingly the Atlantic League kind of either keeps it in house or just kind of lumps it in with somebody else's job.
Well, we fell into this too because I've been doing this so long. So in the beginning, an intern was somebody who got me my Diet Coke behind home plate or held the radar.
Yeah.
Those are so far gone that I have all these data analytical guys, and I started to put, not even trying, to be honest, a few years ago, I started putting the staff together with one or two. I had a guy from UConn and they were data analytics when it first really got hot. And, 5, 6, 7 years later, now I'm getting, hey, I've got another friend who's into this as well. And these kids are, I've got a Yale junior coming. I believe he's a junior. He's starting with us too when he gets back from school here within the next 3 weeks to a month. So I'm in a situation where I really think we fell into this. I don't know. I don't want to speak for the other club, but I know our group that we have are very geared towards not just doing the Yacker Tech day-to-day statistic stuff. They want to work with the coaches and really see if we can do some more, get a little deeper into this. And it goes beyond me. I'm old school. I wasn't taught by saber guys or anything what to do. I was taught by old school scouts with the jugs gun, So I get to throw. Plus, John Castillo has really taken these kids under his wing in the last month, and working with training them how to run a workout and how to scout and how to do things. So I think you're going to see a well-rounded kid come out of Rockland here that like 2 years ago, we sent someone to the MLB Network in the studios to work, analytically. We sent someone to the Washington Nationals. I think this year we're going to send a few guys off to somewhere because we really are excited about the group that we have coming in. Definitely.
Yeah. Nice. I just keep looking at Nick to see if he got that thought back.
I never got it back. It's the kind of question that I know as soon as I listen back to this conversation when I'm editing it, I can go, there it is. And then you're going to get a text from me going, This was the question, by the way.
That's all right. But
I was curious, sort of, when it comes to, I'm trying to think of the best way to verbalize this question. Classic, Ryan. Thinking of a concept. That's not an actual question. I guess more or less, this is something that we're going to start delving into just a little bit. So, on the Frontier League, and this is where I said I was going to take a little off reservation. So this is the moment for you, Nick, of just Ryan really is going to go off the rails here. When it comes to the Frontier League, we're not talking like roster rules, talking like more the way that rosters are handled. What do the rules look like in the league for, say, a transaction is done, some player gets signed to the team, even in the offseason? How quick is the turnaround that you have to get that sent into the league and then have that posted publicly? Because I'm fascinated by like the variation between leagues on that. Something I'm currently hitting my head off a brick wall about.
I won't lie and say I know the exact date on that this year, but I will say that managers in the Frontier League don't have a lot of time. I mean, they are if our guys report somewhere, I don't know, between the 27th and 28th, around there, we have our first game the 9th. The Frontier League opens up. I think we're on the road in Jersey, I want to say. So I'm pretty sure that they have, if they have 2 weeks, that's long. I don't even think they do. There's not a lot of time for them to crunch these numbers, take a look at guys. I mean, if you play, you have to have a couple exhibition games or inter squad scrimmages or something. So, these managers can base their decisions off, but it's brutal. It's tough. I mean, I think in the Can-Am we had a little more time, maybe not much more. But I think it's really crunched. I mean, I remember talking to TJ about that last year, and it was, I give them credit because it's like they have a couple days sometimes, before they may know when it's due by now. I'm not privy. I don't know that, but I know that you're talking, maybe a week and a half or so that they have to turn around and get that official roster in so the league can put it up. It's not a lot of time. So, if you're a rookie, word to the wise, you got to do something early, man. In this, you got to have a good camp because there's not a lot of time for these managers to get things on paper,
So a lot of question marks though, from the manager perspective, pretty late in the game there, but I can see how that applies pressure, basically everyone involved. How fun. The other thought I had was, how, and I ask this to everybody who comes on, so sorry if I'm a broken record, listeners, but from your front office's perspective, from, whether it's the scouting side or fully on baseball operations or from TJ's point of view, how forward thinking are y'all? Because the roster restrictions in the Frontier League are fascinating, some of the most complicated out there. I mean, how far ahead are you thinking when it comes to this roster, or are you sort of just putting together a roster that seems like it's going to give you the best shot on day one, and then you'll kind of go from there?
No, I think that the managers, and I know from our manager of what, TJ Stanton has to do, I know that they're thinking already like 2-3 moves ahead, because you're in a situation, like you said, you're so restricted with the age and with how many movements you can make. It's not like, I think maybe the Atlantic might be where you have unlimited movements, or at least you have many more. In the Frontier League, it's very limited to how many transactions. You can't just be cranking guys in and out every day. I joke about the old Newark Bears. I remember one year, many moons ago, I counted, it was over 100 transactions or something. Those days are over. Now it's the kind of thing where you really are restricted. So you have to think about somebody that's going to be able to do more than one thing. Back to that again. And you're also going to have to think about the DL, when this guy comes off, and the salary cap. And, there's so much more to this that people don't realize, that I never knew, up until, the last 10, 12 years, really, that I started to watch these guys. I've been in the war room, for some of the years with the Jamie Keefe, and watch what they do. And they have so many mathematical, what if this happens? What if that happens? And if this guy doesn't make it, then now we're stuck and we need to have another vet. We need another rookie. And then, so, this is where the tryouts come in, because a lot of these kids don't realize they may be the victim of a mistake that's made, and they need another rookie. And it could be somebody that's working out right for us here on the 3rd of May. So that's the good thing, is that, put yourself in that situation as a player, be that guy, be that guy. And, So I agree. I don't think they can just put it out. I think that roster, they have to, if they want to win, they're going to have to go back over all these possibilities of what could happen. And then, of course, something will happen that they didn't think about, of course, because that's baseball. But, Sure.
One of the questions I did have here was just because we mentioned a little bit last time you were on the show, which is the effect that visa players are, because you can never really reliably count on visas, especially when you're dealing with a league that plays both in America and in Canada. So it adds an extra dimension onto it.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with those kinds of guys, are you really just looking for like, okay, these are going to be game breaking type players where it's worth the die roll, I guess, to bring them in, because if we get their visa sorted out and we get them on the roster, they could really be a difference maker for us? Or is it the kind of, no, we think they can be a piece, so let's see what we can't do?
I would say the first. I've seen less and less visa players overall. I don't want to say, especially in the frontier, it just takes so long, for especially for it takes longer for the American teams than the Canadian teams to get the visas done. And there's, TJ being a Canadian, citizen as well. I've talked to him about this. Right. And there are reasons that I won't pretend that I remember, but I know that they get them a lot quicker. And so I would say it's got to be a game changer. I mean, if I'm running a roster, whatever team, it's got to be somebody that I've seen a track record that could be, a real horse, because otherwise, you may never. I mean, I remember, getting to the second round of the playoffs with Jamie Keefe one time, and we had never had our closer. We had a starting pitcher. We had a position. We had like 3 really experienced kids that were going to be part of that Can-Am round. We never saw them. So as you guys just mentioned, I mean, the visa thing has been such a problem. It's only getting worse. And yeah, you get them down to the consulate in Manhattan, but by the time you go through all this, you're talking like, if you get them in by mid-July, you've done a great job. It's almost not worth it sometimes,
Yeah. Yeah, it's the kind of thing you really got to start early in the offseason where you're like, look, I need you to commit now. And guys like that, they're more like, let me see what my options are here.
Always. You're up against that because they don't care about the turnaround of the visa, right? They don't care. Yeah. So you're exactly right. I mean, now how do you get the guy to commit? It's January. You want to get on this stuff as someone in the office of a staffed team that has enough guys to do that. And then again, that's, it's minor league baseball. So whoever's handling that is probably handling 30 other things with the season coming up. And now you just said it. The player says, well, I'm debating because there's a team in the American Association that I'm looking at as well. Now it's, what do you do there? You're going to put in for a visa with a guy that you may not even have. That's brutal. Now you got a real problem. I agree. There are teams, I will tell you, that will not do visas. They just don't do them. There are teams in independent ball, as you've probably seen that are just, we're not doing this because they don't want to deal with it. And I understand that, it's hard, but I totally get it because it's just too hard now to get players here for the duration of the year,
Yeah, exactly. And then if they get injured or if they just wind up not performing, then it's like we dedicate all these resources, we put in all this work for a guy that's going to be here for 3 weeks.
And the other problem is getting him now you have to get him into Canada. And, that's another thing. They're going for their visa. They don't have it yet. You can't get that pitcher to play Three Rivers, Ottawa, and Quebec. It's not going to happen. So, definitely that's an issue that, unfortunately, I wish it was different. I'd love to see those guys get more of an opportunity here. Who wouldn't, especially because there's so much talent down there in Latin America. But how are you going to get, an outfielder from Mexico here or from the DR and get that paperwork in and have them for May 9th? There's almost no way. I don't think you could. Yeah. Good point.
It's a tough one for organizations that typically just don't have the resources to give to that. I mean, you look across the board in indie ball, there may be like a handful that could do it.
Yeah. That's the one problem. And then the second issue is, how many teams are going to hold the spot, like you said, for a guy that you don't know what they can do. And, I don't want to be the guy that recommended a visa guy that didn't work out and the team made the team put all this money. It happened. I was involved in it. It happens to all of us. But at the same time, I can't fault the player, the manager for overlooking those guys because they reach out. But, there's only so much you can do with that,
Yeah, exactly. Availability is a very good attribute to have.
Yeah, it sure is.
Ryan, you have anything else to go on this, or?
I got one more with
All
something
right.
I'm following. I know you're kind of up against it time-wise there, Nick, and I know you've been very generous with your time, Kev, but I got to ask, because it's been the deep dive of my week, has been how has the change in rules with the Mexican League, have you seen that affecting things on your end, or has that sort of, at least sort of not touched you with complications so far?
So I have, actually. I had this conversation with our manager about, I don't know, 3 weeks ago. Yeah, they're taking more guys, basically. For the terms, their rosters, I guess, have expanded. I don't know if that's the right word to say, but yeah, it definitely has affected us, because now the guys that you're going for, these older, your vets, you have less of fish in the barrel now, because they're looking to go to Mexico. They're going to get paid a lot of money. They're going to go down there and hook on with what they hope is a faster track to MLB. And so I think it definitely affects. I mean, I haven't seen it, working with the rookies, putting the tryout together yet, but I know, talking to the manager and one other manager, they have seen that affect them, because players are saying, well, hold on a minute, before I sign on with you guys and play in, here in the States, I have something that might work in Mexico. And players tell, their managers down there about other players. And before you know it, this guy's taking 2 other guys and they're going down there. I know you see some of the former Jackals players from last year. I was looking at the rosters. There's some down there that were in with other teams. So it definitely is changing things. I think that's that could water some things down too for the independent teams too, because you're taking a lot of their bread and butter guys out of you,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just saw my count, and I could be missing. It's hard to track every transaction, but I have seen, I think now we're over 60 guys who played indie ball last year who were there. And I think it's up over 130 guys who have played indie ball since COVID. So wow. That'll thin the herd. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and again, this opens something up for, I hate to say the younger guys, but it really does. The guys that are off the radar can now put some numbers up. They may get looked at, here, but I think, the Mexican League the talent there has quadrupled. I mean, it's just something, there's nothing that, the indie leagues can do. And it's, I don't like to see it, but it is the way it is. There's nothing we could do. Money talks, as they say, and the roster opening up, down there will definitely be, change things. But I think the Frontier League will have an awesome product. I think all these leagues still will. I think there's enough guys that, the Atlantic is the Atlantic. I think they'll be fine. And I think, it's the young players that this league wants that are here to shine. So let's hope that, the season is definitely a good one for sure.
Definitely.
Okay.
And it's obviously a lot of really good talent that's still around there. We've seen a lot of really good managers come into the fold or rejoin. In the case of our guest, we gave Baltimore material to, in the case of Mike Pinto, which that was, there's going to be one team from the East Division that's not going to be happy with us. But, there's a lot of teams that aren't happy with us. That's life in this city. But,
that's on us.
Exactly.
You guys can come see us in Rockland anytime.
Oh, no, we're definitely, I mean, I always come up there, so I'm always around for that. And I know we have a couple of series I think we're looking at getting up there for. I know definitely when Joliet comes to town, we were looking at that one. But, yeah, and, so, Ryan, if you're all set, then I will.
Good.
All right, then I will give you the floor, Kev. You know the deal around here at the very end. Plug what you want to plug, say what you want to say, go back to anything we talked to, or bring up a new topic for the very end here. We appreciate you coming on and giving us your time.
Fellas, I appreciate it. I appreciate the time. I'll just end with the little plug on the May 3rd and 4th workout one more time, which is the New York Boulders tryout that is coming up. 2 days for $100, the cheapest tryout you're going to find as far as price goes. And we've got, 2 organizations there looking at guys. Jonathan Castillo representing the MLB Bureau and helps to place guys and he'll be helping out, and you'll have Carlos Mirabal, Baseball United, helping out. And I just hope to see a lot of young players there. And then June 21 and 22, our college senior grad tryout. Guys, it was great. I enjoyed talking to you. Anything I could do at any time during the year, you want to talk baseball, you know where to find me, for sure.
Definitely. We appreciate you coming on here, and definitely when we get up to the ballpark this year, we'll swing up and say hi to it. Of course, I hope this time I don't have to. Yep. Hopefully we can move the chain though on the stairs though. I had to step over that a couple times.
That's it. We'll get you up there in the press box. See, I'd like you to see our interns in action as they have their Yacker Tech thing on, and I'd love to talk baseball. Guys, it's a pleasure, and thanks so much for the opportunity today. You guys are great.
Once again, I'd like to thank Kev for coming on. As we joked on the show, it's turning into a little bit of an annual thing to have him on. So I guess we'll talk to him again next April. But no, we do appreciate him hopping on there. And I guess when we go up to see Joliet in, what is that, June? I want to say they go up to New York. Because I know we told Pinto, when they're playing in New York, we'll go up and we'll see you there.
I have so many schedules in my head right now, dude. It's just pudding and promotional dates. I'm on it right now. I got you.
I got this.
Oh, okay. Whatever. Wow.
It is, in fact, June. It is the 14th, 15th, and 16th. And I think 16 is Father's Day. So
I'm around. By middle of this week, I should have most of my indie ball plans figured out. So we'll talk. Maybe we'll get some out there, and maybe we'll do a live stream or two from not ballparks. We'll see, man. Got some fun stuff coming.
Definitely there. So we'll stop by and we'll see everybody in Rockland when we get there. So we just want to wrap up on 2 points, 2 quick little news items there, both from New Jersey independent clubs here. Things of note: Sussex County is going to make the May 11th game the Brett Luther Memorial Game. As some may recall, Brett, who was the broadcaster for the Sussex County Miners, passed away in December after a battle with cancer. So they are making that his memorial game. There's going to be fireworks after, a memorial picnic prior. 50% of the money from the picnic will go into a trust for his 3 kids. The trust will continue to have money added to it until they hit 21 when they get access to it. The goal for the actual night, the game itself, will be $10,000. A little bit ambitious to get it in one night, but still, I think so on some level it is achievable there, given the circumstances around it.
I like supporting families of nice people who pass away.
I'll wrap up the point on just, I think it's nice that the Miners are still doing right by him and his family. I think that's a great thing to see. And that is also their home opening weekend. I think their home opener is actually the day before, followed by this game. So I will definitely be up there for one, if not both of those. So,
nice.
Other bit of New Jersey news. We mentioned it earlier. We'll mention it now. The museum at Hinchcliffe Stadium is opened. The Charles J. Muth Museum. It will celebrate the history of Hinchcliffe Stadium and Negro League Baseball in general. It's currently appointment only. However, starting on the 9th of May, you will have access an hour prior to Jocko games if you have a ticket. So good for them. In case you're wondering who Charles J. Muth is, because, maybe you don't know, is named after the person that gave $5 million to build the facility. So
there you go.
Hey, good use of $5 million? Probably, maybe, who knows? So,
whatever floats your boat. Whatever gets people remembering you after you die.
To think he could have put that $5 million towards a ballpark village. We're nearly at the end of the show. Only bit of a Chicago update I have, because all I really got to was just there is something going on with the way the families were treated. I got that from a couple players saying, hey, I didn't love the way my family or my people were treated. It seems like access was changed midway through the season, as in one of the things I had heard. Again, one of the things I had heard was that instead of being able to go down to the locker room area after games, they were told wait in the parking lot instead, which is weird. But hey, that was the main
in the
thing.
Locker room. I get it.
Yeah, that and generally they didn't also really want them in the stadium either. They were kind of very insistent on the whole wait outside thing. So because they wanted to.
We're still collecting testimony on that.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I stress one. I want to make it clear.
People updated. but you'd not also show all cards here because it's coming together.
Exactly. I just like to make it very clear when it's something I have multiple people on and when it's something I have one thing on. Mm-hmm. Although I will say there is one figure in the Dogs Front Office that keeps coming up, and it's always the same way. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to proceed with extreme caution because everything I have heard about him leads me to believe he is not a particularly empathetic individual. And so, on that note, most of the people in the know exactly who I'm talking about and can put the context clues together. So if you'd like to fill in the picture a little bit more for me, DM's open. So, want to put plugs in so we can wrap this show?
Yeah, man. NY Ball Nation, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. I'm excited because getting preseason content put together just about right 30-40% of the way through Atlantic League stuff. So it's going to drop preview-wise next week. MSI, if it's going to be one big video or a bunch of smaller ones. Could be a bunch of smaller ones and then a big one at the end. I'm not sure yet. It's going to kind of depend on how things come together and if I'm just vibing getting some content done.
Personal opinion on that. I'd go smaller with one.
I agree.
Marking.
I agree, and that's kind of where I'm going, but I don't want to I don't want to promise one thing or another. If I'm being honest with you,
that is fair.
Yeah. Also, shout out to my sponsor. I can't believe it's not goat milk. Huh? Can't believe it's not goat milk. It's not from a cow. It's not from a goat. It's from a human.
The problem is, there are companies out there that description meets. I need a promo code.
I just like giving you things that you have to now decide if you're going to edit out or not.
And the problem is you put them at the end right when I'm tired of editing too.
Yep.
And so I'm just like, just leave it.
Chaos.
90% of the time, my decision when I'm listening back on something, I'm just like, leave it.
Whatever.
If I take it out, it's going to be a project. And I'm already 2 hours in on this edit.
That's what she said. Anyway.
Who is she? You're home alone.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, she finally left you. It took me like 60 episodes, but finally we got there.
I think it's funny because like Jackie's on the road and she's like, "Oh, I miss you. Like I miss hearing your voice or whatever." And then like, but like, will she listen to a couple-hour podcast of me talking baseball? Did do that? No, I think that's where the line is drawn. So it's fine. A woman who knows her limits.
I was ready for her to go, "Don't worry, I'm just getting cigarettes. I'll be right back."
Wow. I mean, for sure. I mean, she is in Florida, which is what else you do.
Yeah. Enough.
We're like, I live in Florida, blah, blah, blah. No, it's like Morriston, Florida. It's the middle of nowhere. You have no idea.
Indie Ball Pod on Twitter, Indie Ball Report everywhere else.
So unhinged.
Sicko Cast continues on. Next week, Atlantic League preview episode. We also got an interview from an Atlantic League umpire, Andy McPherson, which is actually a really fun interview. And the second time we've had to go live on location for this show in the past year. Woohoo.
I'm so excited for this preview. It's going to be great.
I know. I'm excited baseball, for the show in general. I think it's going to be really good. So with that, we'll leave you with bated breath waiting for episode 268 because episode 267 has drawn to a conclusion finally after much trial and tribulation. But one thing holds true, which will hopefully be the case in every ballpark we mentioned this week, which is until next time, don't forget to play ball.